It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Satyam Kantamneni, co-founder, managing partner, and chief experience officer for UXReactor. The company was founded back in 2014 together with his brother Prasad, and under their leadership, UXReactor has become the fastest growing specialized experience design firm in the USA, with a team of over 60 employees spread over 3 continents. Before starting his entrepreneurial journey, Satyam served as managing director of product design at Citrix, and prior to that was instrumental in building PayPal's global design center in India while leading a design team based in Silicon Valley. He is an alumnus of Harvard Business School's famed general management program, studied design thinking at Stanford University, and holds a master's degree in human factors from Wright State University. Through UXReactor, Satyam is demonstrating that user experience can and should drive enterprise-wide innovation and business outcomes, and has enabled clients to generate multiple billions in additional value from user-centered innovation. He lives in Pleasanton, California with his wife and children. Satyam Kantamneni, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and a privilege being here, Brant.
Great to have you here today. I know we've spoke several months ago. We've had conflicting schedules and, of course, the winter flus that have prevented us from coming together. But I'm glad we could both make it today. Where do we find you today on your podcast?
I'm actually in the suburbs of San Francisco Bay Area. A city called Pleasanton is where I'm located, and I live a couple of miles away.
Nice, great. Well, I know you didn't grow up there, and so we want to get a little bit to that later in the story. But let's first talk about your early years. I know you're an immigrant. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Sure. I actually grew up in India, and my journey there. So technically, I've actually now crossed. I've lived more time in America than actually in India. It's interesting that I kind of state that just because it's just been an interesting journey. But I've lived my first 22 years in India. I was born there. I was born in an army family, and traveled across India, and then kind of basically moving like any military family in most countries. You're moving every few years, and you're putting your roots in new locations and learning new things. And a country as diverse as India, it was fascinating because you're learning new languages, new cultures, new cuisines, and overall that just became part of the journey there. And then
was your dad a career officer, or your mother perhaps?
My father was a career officer. My father's younger brother was a career officer. My father's sister was married to a career officer. So a lot of the services and the ethos of soldiering has actually very much left in my ethos.
So lots of different schools probably too as you moved around a bit.
Absolutely. 7 schools to complete my high school.
Wow. So was that, it sounds like it was a very interesting thing. I've had an opportunity to travel India. I think I told you I lived in Singapore for about 10 years. So I did get a chance to travel a lot. But I know just how diverse India is, probably one of the most diverse countries, certainly in South Asia.
Absolutely. And it was a fascinating journey, I wish. And again, I'm a lot of what I am today is obviously the exposure that I've gotten then. And I'm very, very privileged to have gotten that.
Was it hard moving from school to school, though? Because I know that the Indian education system is very rigorous, from what I understand, and standards are quite high.
Absolutely. Again, it's not Indian education system is diverse state to state, and it's got a lot of different varieties of curriculums, the languages that you learn. Uh, but then, as a student, I didn't understand that you could actually have a same teacher all through your math program or whatever, and the same curriculum that you're working through. And I see my kids today in America, they're studying in the same school district for pretty much their whole school time. I think that's a luxury that we didn't have. So you're learning different styles, different flavors of teaching. And again, it was what it is. That was just the norm, and so we all took it for granted. And But high school education, I think in India is still pretty high quality. And then comes the real rigor of going to a professional program, which I did my engineering in India. And that itself was, again, a very rigorous process of getting into the program and then obviously completing it. So, again, I think all in all, at that, I now in hindsight think that, yeah, I mean, it's a very different system. At that point, it just seemed to be, well, that's what everyone was doing, and I was doing the same.
It is what it is, right? Exactly. Now I know you have one brother. Your brother's involved in the business. Any sisters or other brothers in the family?
Nope, just one brother, two
Yeah,
boys.
got it. And thinking back, kind of over those early years, what are some of the memories that you take away, particularly from lessons maybe that you had from your parents or other relatives or maybe coaches or folks that teachers that were involved in your younger years?
So I think family obviously leaves the first impression for everybody. In my case too, my grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur, and but then uh, he saw the success and the failure in the same generation.
Hmm.
So my parents and all, they decided to kind of go into the services sector. And therefore they've all went and got a job, and obviously they joined the services, the military services. And for me, I grew up and hearing the grandfather's entrepreneurial stories, and then the seeing the military ethos that all my family around me, immediate family, was living. And so those left a big impression overall. And I think I've gotten a little bit of both. I actually believe that together, when humans come together, they do a lot of great things. They It's a you need to have a common mission and a purpose. And I look at that same way. I think of entrepreneurs more as problem solvers, again in a business context. But then if you can bring the right team and if you can focus on the right problem, there's a lot that can be done. So I think those are probably what I would say are key things. Obviously, diversity and adapting to different cultures and adapting to different contexts was actually a big part of what I learned all through. Again, as I said earlier, that was something I took for granted then, but I really appreciate it when I compare myself with a lot of the people who have been in maybe a single track all their life. So again, these are things that I continue to kind of ponder on and continue to kind of use as my compass as I make decisions.
I know that the Indian, education system is very rigorous. We talked about that earlier. But did you pursue some entrepreneurial things? Was there time to do that as you were growing up, or was that not so much a part of the culture as it is here?
Actually, my parents actually allowed me to do an experiment a lot of things. I actually did door-to-door sales in my 11th grade, and I
No
for
kidding.
for 3 months I was like trying to sell computer education, and going door to door, and that taught me quite a bunch of things. Right after I finished my undergrad in engineering, I actually tried to assemble computers myself and sell it around in the community, and took off, but didn't build a business model, and realized that learned my first lesson that just selling a computer or two here and there is good pocket money, but it's not a good business overall to kind of do things. And but anyway, nuances like these. So again, I would always try and do things, but they were, I would say, more pocket money and more experiences today that kind of have helped me. But building an enterprise, building a successful enterprise is a very different endeavor. And but again, the essence of trying something and trying to go and do something from a scratch always remained.
Now I know you went on to, is it Osmania University? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, that's it's actually the university that's in Hyderabad, India, which is South India. So it's a pretty accomplished university in Hyderabad, and I graduated from there.
is that where you kind of ended up at the end of the journey, or where Dad was at the time when you decided to go on to school, or was that a school that you selected to go to for your engineering degree?
So I think it's one of those things that happens fairly common in the Indian military families. So right around our final high school and engineering, my mom moved over to Hyderabad with both the sons, both me and my brother, and we both finished our final part of our education, because that's the most crucial part when you kind of before you start kind of building your professional career. So we moved to Hyderabad, and then I got admitted to a pretty decent program in Osmania University, and then I kind of continued there and finished my program there. And the same with my brother. He also finished his undergrad and a part of his master's in India before we both moved to the United States to continue our education.
Sounds like you two are very close. What's the age difference between you and Prasad?
3 years.
3 years. Yeah, awesome.
3 years. He's
So,
older.
yeah, okay, got it. And you went on to Wright State University, and I believe you studied in human factors engineering. Was that what your master's degree was in finally?
Absolutely. So both of
Yeah.
us actually. So he got a double master's, Prasad, in computer science uh, and human factors. I had no idea what human factors was. So when he would describe it, and he would often describe it as something I would do and enjoy, and I had no idea what human factors was, even nowhere in my purview. But then he would keep saying that, and then like any younger brother, you're like, yeah, whatever, and you kind of move forward with that. But then eventually, I did actually take a course in what at that point was called human computer interface design, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And In fact, I aced my program. I had 100 out of 100, and I got all A's in that program. And so at the end of it, I said, no, I actually think I want to kind of consider going to human factors. And he connected me to uh, the professor that he was working with. Now, the one story I haven't shared here is all my life I was actually preparing to be an army officer. I was going to
Well, I was
join
going
the
to ask you about that,
yeah.
particularly with the history of service in your family.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was intending to do. So right after high school, I intended to join the military academy, which is a fairly selective process, like similar to America. And when you want to go to any of the academies here, I actually got recommended by the interview panel, but I was what they call PR, permanent rejection. I got a PR in for being colorblind.
Hmm,
So obviously the Indian Army doesn't take officers or soldiers who are colorblind, because that's a
right.
part of the thing. So I actually got a PR, and then I had to go change and pivot at that point to kind of another career, and then I continued to do engineering. So that was kind of the path I took, and but when I went to Wright State, so now connecting the dots there, Wright State was fascinating because human factors had a lot of research grants that was coming from the defense industry.
Hmm,
And In 2002, I was studying human robotic interaction. Today, what we know as drones and unmanned aerial vehicles. So I was studying how humans interact with unmanned aerial vehicles in complex environments, and then designing and understanding that human performance in that
yeah.
context. So again, two things came together, and it was fascinating. And again, that ended up becoming basically my career for the next 25 years.
Right.
So it's been a journey.
What was that first job you took coming out of Wright State?
So right after Wright State, so one of the things we study in human factors is the human part of anything. So when you study human robotic interaction, you assume that how would the human interact with the system, and so you study a lot of research techniques on how humans behave, their performance, etc. So I continued that line of work and as a user researcher, so studying how users interact in systems. And my first job was in an actually I did an internship with Siemens, and then right after that got a full-time job at a pretty good design firm in Columbus, Ohio called Lextent, as a user researcher, studying
Hmm.
and how people interacted in systems or what issues existed in their interaction with systems. So that was my first job.
Tell us a little bit about what that is, because I think for a lot of our audience, this may be a job that some of us aren't familiar with. I know that's true with me. So,
So
what does a user experience architect do?
a user experience researcher. So a researcher. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I designed, like, we are today surrounded by systems, and technology systems. And it could be your phone, it could be your TV, it could be anything. And everything is a technology system. How you interact with it is as a what we call human in the loop in the system. It changes. Like my mom, if I give her a remote and say, "Can you increase the contrast?" She may not even know how to kind of go about it. I'm just giving an example. Or you ask my kid to kind of go do something, they would not do about it. They would not know how to go about it. So you actually, as a researcher, you study that. You study how people are perceiving us,
Mm.
interacting with the system. Where is it hard? What's the journey? And I'll give you an example. And as a company, we do a lot of user research with products. So we work with this security camera company that is very well known in America, but I'll not name them for NDA reasons. But you can go in Costco and buy the security camera. But then the unboxing experience, you have to first unbox it, you have to set it up, you have to kind of install it, you have to do all those things. Now, as a researcher, we are studying how do you unbox it, how do you set it up. So we identify what we call points of friction.
Mm.
We kind of identify points of opportunity. Points of friction could be, hey, I don't even know I need to download an app. Like how do we tell them? So these are nuances that we are studying as researchers, and then we fine tune it, we clean it up, we make it better. And in this case, we found 12 different friction points. So that's what a user researcher does. They're studying how
Ah.
users interact with the system.
Cool, cool. Well, you went on to do wonderful work with a couple of great companies. I know you've spent about 4 or 5 years at PayPal, and then 6 years at Citrix. And I know the Citrix organization, having lived in Santa Barbara, I know they got some of their founding there from years and years ago. So in those particular jobs, again, doing the same thing, helping them understand how consumers react with their products. Is that more or less how to describe your work there?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
the work that we do in today is framed under an umbrella called user experience design. So any technology system has to have an element of user experience design. That means how does the company actually design how the users will experience that product or that system? And one part of that is user research. One part of it is the design part. One part of it is the there's the look and feel and everything else that goes into it. So that together is what is called user experience design. So I always say that if you ever use a really good product, technology product, and you enjoy your experience with it, that means somebody has actually spent the time designing it and thinking through it. And just the same way as you would go into a Ritz Carlton and say, I love the check-in experience, I like the smell of the exterior, all that is designed by someone in the same way. So that's kind of what I would do, and I did for pretty much 16 years and inside companies like, as you called out, PayPal, Citrix, Fidelity, etc. Before I decided to kind of go on and do my own.
And they would have departments actually dedicated to this, right? I mean, that's kind of,
Absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely, and departments with hundreds of people in some of the companies.
Wow, wow. And is it mostly just technology companies that do this, Satyam, or are there other companies that have adapted that as well?
I think it's actually technology companies are I would say laggards in this adoption.
Hmm.
Service design. So when you look at restaurant experiences, hospitality experiences, as a word, experiences. Any user, any customer experiencing the product that you're selling. When it could be whatever product you're selling, could be a service or a product, has always had experienced designers. And but then in the technology world, it's kind of more recent, especially given that any given person at any given point is interacting with 4 to 5 systems. And if it's not thought out right, and again, today's world, if it's hard to use, people will return it. If it's hard to use,
Right.
people will go and change it. So which is why user experience becomes more and more important, because no more would anyone take on with the crap of, like, hey, it'll take me 2 days to install it and 5 days to troubleshoot it. That's gone. And
Nobody's
again,
got any time anymore to do that. Yeah.
you look at vehicles, cars, that actually in physical, a lot of the design part came from physical systems like cockpit design, which is why military actually was very involved in car HMI, human machine interface, as they would call it. So that's why the companies like Tesla and everybody are doing really well, because they think through the experience of how you buy it, how you troubleshoot it, how you leverage it, etc.
Now, is most of this on the front end as the product's being designed, or do they kind of, okay, oh, we've made something, now we've got to figure out how to explain to people how to use it? Where does that fall?
That's the wrong way of doing it,
Yeah,
absolutely. Where you build it and then you figure out how to build an experience. The philosophy that we uh, espouse and we kind of share a lot about is you need to know your user really well, and
mm,
every user is different, and every user's context is different. If you so you need to understand the user, you need to understand their journey and their experience, and then you design that journey and experience, and then you kind of engineer it.
yeah,
The most companies in our line of work unfortunately go the other way around. They first engineer it
yeah.
because they can, and then they go figure out how do I build a good experience with it, and then they've struggled with it. And it's a very deliberate process, and many companies don't even spend the time knowing their user and journey, which is kind of where we started our conversation early on with empathy. And
Yeah.
empathy is a big part of that, because if you don't know your user, you don't know why what they're doing, what their context is, and it actually will backfire in the long run. And again, as I said, people will then react with returning the product or not using the product, and that's not why you're building or investing millions of dollars.
I remember in my early days growing up as a brand manager at Procter and Gamble, we did a couple of things that really provided some amazing insights. One of them was called home visits, right? We would
There you go.
literally go to people in their home and, you know, not watch them shower, but watch them how to use soap or, laundry detergent or diapers. And of course, focus groups, of course, was a big part of it. And, it was amazing to be able to just sit there, really truly listen and understand that, people use things very differently, but to really try to gain that insight into those types of improvements, the type of betterments that they can come to. It was fascinating.
Absolutely. And by the way, both those are examples of user research techniques.
Yeah.
So we call them immersive methods, where you immerse yourself in their life and you follow them through in their day, and then you kind of see how they're using or not using, and then you collate that across many people, and that's how you kind of identify opportunities and problems.
Now I think it was about the time, maybe it's got the timing a little bit off, but I think when you left Citrix was when you and your brother founded UX Reactor. Is that about right?
That's right.
Yeah. And what was the
That's
motivation behind that? Did you just kind of feel that, there was a larger message here, or that, individual consulting could be a better way about doing it? What made you kind of decide to leave the corporate world and do this on your own?
so I think there was a fundamental friction point for driving good experience design in the world, and in technology products. And the fundamental problem was people were not approaching it as a multidisciplinary problem solving method. So when, especially given that so I'll give you some context. So when I was running my teams in different organizations, we were hiring from design programs, we were hiring from a lot of different angles. And then when people came in, they were coming in like, I'm a designer, I'm a researcher, and so they come in and play their roles. And we felt this was actually our belief, a fundamental belief, was that we needed a multidisciplinary practitioner. We
Hmm.
needed a polymath, and I talk about it in my book too. Somebody who can actually bring in different facets of how to think about solving a problem. And Because of when people come in and just play fundamental their own roles as a silo, it doesn't drive outcomes. A good designer should be able to talk engineering. A good designer should be able to talk business. A good designer should be able to also design. A good designer should be able to think about strategy. So that's kind of what I mean by multidisciplinary. So we actually made it a thing like, how can we go groom people that actually will solve it the same way? So if I was going to give you a military analogy, my intention was, how might we actually create a Navy SEAL team,
Hmm.
an equivalent of that in this context of building experience design. Now, before that, I'll actually maybe take a quick, segue. If you think of innovators, and fundamentally, who's an innovator? Innovator actually knows or identifies a problem and then experiments around it and then builds something of value. And if you think about designers, that's exactly what they're doing. They're talking to users, they're doing user research, they're identifying the problem, they're coming back and they're designing to solve that problem in the technology context, and then iterating on that and then building a solution. But
Right.
then I found that many designers wouldn't even frame themselves as innovators. And that was the fundamental issue. And they were waiting for someone else to tell them what the problem is and they would design it. And we felt that that's not the way to approach it. So we said, let's go groom our own talent. We created our own process around that. And that's how the genesis of UX Reactor came to be.
Got it. Got it. And you and your brother co-founded that. Now, was he kind of in a similar path, working in corporate user experience types of things, companies as well, or was he on a different path before the two of you
No,
joined
we
forces?
actually, interestingly, we both got the same degree in human
Right.
factors, but we both ended up in different parts of functions of, building our expertise. So he actually he started as a user researcher, had a computer science degree, so he had multidisciplinariness from being think like an engineer, but then or think like a human factors person, but have deep skills in engineering. I also had a background in engineering, but then I started as a user researcher, in fact, like him. But then I quickly moved into design, proper design, and what we call interaction design. And then from there, I went to design leadership. So that was kind of where we both kind of invested in different parts of the skills in different organizations. So he had stints at Honeywell and Yahoo, and a little time at Microsoft when his search division was sold from Yahoo to Microsoft. But anyway, so that's when we connected and we kind of discussed, hey, we've been taking it at different ways, but we are not getting good outcomes because many
Mm.
companies had invested, hundreds of millions of dollars in this line of work, but not getting there completely. And so that's why we said, let's kind of go try that out in our way. And then that's when we got together.
So what is that, kind of that secret sauce? What do you offer now as UX Reactor to companies? Is it the stage at which they involve you? Is it greater insights? Tell us a little bit about kind of your secret sauce.
I, to be honest, it's not a lot of secret sauce, but it is a lot of rigor.
Yeah.
And the rigor is, you need to really spend time with your users, understand what works for them, what the journey is, what the pain points are, and do it as a consistent process. It can't be done like, when you wish. You cannot be doing it whenever. So that's the first part. So and again, the philosophy that we have, I would say the secret sauce is always follow the user.
Yeah.
Follow the user, understand the experience, design it, iterate on it, and then engineer it. Because today engineering is getting more and more commoditized, more and more powerful. So engineering can do whatever it needs to do, but make sure that you're spending the right energy and the right places. So knowing the right problem to solve is more important than solving it right.
Mm.
And that's kind of
Wait a
where
minute. Say that again. That's a good line.
knowing the problem to solve is more important than solving it right.
Yeah.
And in fact, the same way as I give a military analogy, yes, you can be a sharpshooter and you can be a great sniper, but knowing where to aim and where the enemy is going to be is actually way more valuable.
Yeah.
And as user researchers, as that skill provides you a lot of insights around where to focus, how to where to kind of spend the time, where the biggest friction points are. So we end up doing a lot of research for companies. We do a
Right.
lot of design for companies. We run the whole process for companies.
Hmm.
So
So
all
you
that
have
stuff.
engineers on staff too that help with some of the design work?
No.
No.
So we have people who come from engineering backgrounds,
Right.
back to the multidisciplinary aspect, but we don't do any engineering. So
Yeah.
this is one of the I would say things that we have been very deliberate about, that we don't want to be the designer and the creator, because we found that there's an intrinsic bias when you become both, where
Mm.
you are trying to create only what you're only trying to design what you can create, and we believe that that should be two different aspects. The same way as a contractor should not be the architect of a building. The architect should design the right solution, and the architect the best solution for what's needed, and the contractor should make sure that that's kind of built to the design.
You very kindly sent along your book, User Experience Design, a practical playbook to fuel business growth. I haven't had a chance to read it cover to cover, but I'm enthralled by it. We were talking a little bit about that before, and I'd mentioned the user empathy play, and I thought that was just excellent because I can remember back in my days at both Procter and Disney, talking to some of the folks that were responsible for some of the design, whether it was software or anything else, and they just literally didn't have a clue. It was so hard to communicate to them what we were trying to do. And let's just say there was a very high lack of empathy. So I was happy to see that. When did you write the book? Has this been something that's come out recently, or something that was kind of the foundation for UX Reactor?
So the system behind the book was our first thing we created. So
Yeah.
when Prasad and I got together, we said, what are we actually even saying we want from people? So we created the system. We started training talent from that system, and then that became the core of our consulting team, or what we call catalysts in our line of work. And then eventually we realized that a lot of companies have been asking us, hey, can we leverage this technique? Can we do what you're doing? Can we get more of the people like what you do? And again, we are said, we are a sub 100-person company. So we said, let's write it up for others to leverage and get the power of what design can drive. So that's in 2022. It came out in the market, and it's been in market roughly a little over a year, and it's the core of what we do as a firm. So for us, it's what we eat, sleep, and drink. But then as it went into the market, it's been fascinating
Yeah.
of how people are reacting to it, and I also believe it's going to get translated. One of our publishers is going to translate in Mandarin, so it's going to be interesting how that
Fantastic.
plays out.
It's a playbook, very
It's a
much so.
playbook,
And
yeah.
it's got lots of exercises in there and so forth. I'm looking forward to putting it in place with our team here. So let's talk a little bit about your customer base. Who do you serve? Are you mostly enterprise? Do you work with SME, global, national? Tell us a little bit about your customer base
So
to
we
the
work
degree
with
that you can do so without violating confidentials.
no, we work with predominantly global companies, and that's the reason why we have a pretty significant global footprint across three continents. Uh, Most of our work is in what we call enterprise software.
Hmm.
So we design enterprise grade software, and when we say what is enterprise grade software, it is software or digital systems that are created for multi-user, multi-context, multi-modality. So this is like, hey, if you're designing Uber, that's an enterprise system that has a driver context, that has a admin context, that has a customer service context, that has the passenger context, and the different kinds of passenger context. So that's what we call an enterprise system, and we specialize in designing and iterating on that.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where we focus on. Our clients obviously have come from people who want to build a company, so the startups that have a back of napkin idea, and to pretty large, multinationals like Nokia's. And we have seen all of them. We have seen companies that have gone from an idea to a $1 billion valuation, and we have seen companies that have gone from an idea to being sold for 9 digit and hundreds of millions of dollars. To It's just fascinating how when you really focus on the user and you focus on the real pain points, how the company actually starts activating itself and then getting more and more valuable.
How long is that consulting period typically last?
Again, it depends
Yeah.
on the maturity of the company and so on. But typically, any good enterprise product to be built and engineered and to kind of start capturing the true market share it deserves is about a 3 to 4 year process.
Hmm.
So you normally work through that journey with them as their design partner, or we help them in some cases enabling building their design function by itself. But then there's some companies that have already built it and then now are struggling for the next act.
Right.
And
Right.
so that is not going to take 4 years, but that still is adjustments that you make and innovation that you do. So that's again, 6, 7 months, 8 months to kind of get that engine started. But this is a continuous process. You can, because as long as you have users in your system, you constantly are learning from them, you're constantly evolving from them. So it's not something that you do and forget. It's something you do again and again and again and again. Now you do it in house or you do it with a partner. That's again a choice that many companies make, but not doing it is not an option, at least in today's market.
Got it. Got it. And you've obviously transitioned from your early days as a, user experience researcher, doing obviously architecture, et cetera, to now, a CEO. How has kind of your leadership style evolved over that time?
Quite a lot. See, because for the longest while in your career, you're building your functional expertise.
Right.
And as we build functional expertise, you get better, you do more work, you get better. But then as you become a CEO, you realize that there's some functions you had no idea on. And that's a shift. Again, it's coming to 9 years since I've co-founded this firm and I've been running a large part of it. Uh, so you learn that your sales and marketing. I wish I had spent more time in that function. I wish I'd spent more time in building customer support and customer success. And again, I've learned my way through the 9 years. But these are things that as you become a CEO, you suddenly become the leader of all functions.
Right. Yeah.
And that is obviously something that you don't take. I wish I had spent more time learning from my peers at that point. But again, if I was giving myself advice and as my younger self, that's what I would have probably said when during the time at PayPal and Citrix, I should have spent more time learning other functions.
Yeah, the user experience is just such an interesting field when I think about it, and going back to some of my earlier days. But how does that impact your company culture? Is there a certain way that you would describe the company? Are you all pretty geographically dispersed? Are you in kind of one location? And how do you go about kind of communicating what you're all about with everyone?
So two interesting things I would kind of call out there. The first thing is we are located in three continents, but we are
Mm,
centered in the office in those three continents. So we have a team in Hyderabad, India. We have a team, we're headquartered in San Francisco Bay Area where I'm located, and we also have a sizable team here. And then we also have a team in Colombia, Latin America, in
sure.
Medellin. And all the three while we are distributed, but everyone works in those offices, so we're not distributed. Everyone's not working from home, and the
Remote.
reason
Yeah.
why is we are in the job of making value out of ambiguity.
Mm,
And that means people come to us with a concept or an idea or a problem, and then we are trying to make something out of it. And it's a team sport. And people have to get together. So in fact, we in the studio in the office we have here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have more writable space than square footage of our office. So all our walls are writable. All our, there's so much. So we whiteboard a lot. I iterate a lot. We kind of I discuss a lot. So that's why it's a team sport when you're in that location.
right.
That's the first part. So, and that's kind of been a big part. The second part is again taking a page out of the military, ethos that we have. Everybody across the three continents are trained the same way. So, a
Mm,
senior designer or a lead designer in any of the three locations is equally qualified. And we train people. People rotate across, and that way, if the one ambiguity is like if I say I want a competitive analysis between these two experiences or these two products, doesn't matter who's called upon in any of the three locations, they all will come back with a similar quality and a similar outcome. They may push the boundaries, but then at least the minimum barrier is very clearly defined based on their training, and that's again taking a page where how we groom people, and that's kind of again back to the how we started the firm. So anyway, so that's kind of how we are right now. And to talk about culture, it's a very experimental culture.
mm,
If someone has a problem, they define also a couple of solutions to kind of experiment on. So then we let's say let's experiment it, and which is kind of a big part of how we operate and design. The second thing is it's all about experiences. So our it's not an employee. We call them teammates, and for our clients, they are catalysts. And we actually have our HR team actually has a proper playbook talking about experience design, where we talk about employee experiences and everything from the time they interview with us to the point that they leave and become an alumni. Everything is orchestrated as an experience, and we think through it and we deliberate. We do the same thing that we do with our products. So nuances like these is what defines us, and it's fascinating that at least one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is you make your own rules, and we iterate on that as we go here, and it's been a fun place so far.
what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
I mean, again, the good thing is that the people in the firm have been there all the 9 years that we have existed, and you see the growth in themselves. You see the growth in
Mm.
yourself. We run a fairly transparent organization where we discuss things openly and we discuss everything as a design problem. And if someone says like, hey, everything is framed as a design problem, so it's not them, it's not me, it's the problem that we're attacking. And again, you're always looking forward to how people grow, how the people attack a problem, and as Prasad and I, groomed some of these people from,
Yeah.
from doing other parts of careers. We have people who are fashion designers. So
Huh?
that's the other thing. We have 21 different educational backgrounds within our consultants. So
Wow.
I was giving in, we have fashion designers, biology majors, accounting majors, engineering majors, information security majors, just name it. We have every kind of major here from educational backgrounds. And then that allows us to kind of bring that diversity and then allow it, again, back to the factor that we want multidisciplinary practitioners.
Is there kind of a common thread among all those people that you'd say is the same? Like, for example, curiosity. I mean, that would come to mind as something that would be important as a user researcher.
Absolutely. I think this line of work itself is a very curious line of work.
Mm.
Everything is because you're learning new things. Just yesterday, I spent like 8 hours with a leader that runs a 100-person law firm, and we were just like getting excited about everything we're learning about the law firm because we're helping build a law tech product. And but for us, I mean, even though I've been doing this for a while, I'm like just fascinating to learn all these domains. So again, curiosity is a big part of it. Experimentation is a big part of it. Being open and being for ideas and trying out things is another thing. If you come in saying that my way is the only way to do it, I mean, this is
Mm.
not the profession for anyone. You're constantly iterating. As I said, we live in ambiguity, so which is also like if you like certain order, this is also not a line of work because clients pay us to kind of drive and get them the direction that they need to go to. So which is all of that makes a certain level of problem solver who's willing to kind of take who's willing to kind of experiment and try out new things and open about it, and being willing to take failure as an answer when they experiment with something
Yeah.
and start again. So that's a very different mindset. And very quickly you realize if somebody is going to be happy doing this or not within a year or two.
Right, right. Great. Well, Satyam, we're just about out of time. This has been very, very fascinating. We always have one last question, however, that we ask all our CEO guests, and that's kind of what career and life advice would you give to someone who, has their eyes on the corner office someday, or like you, wants to be an entrepreneur.
I think there are two different perspectives. Again, if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, I say experiment. I mean,
Mm.
today, honestly, the whole workforce is very forgiving. In fact, more welcoming of people that have tried something different and may have worked, may not have worked. So, don't wait for the day when everything will be perfect. Just experiment and then start doing things. And again, if it works out, go build it out. I always, as an entrepreneur, I've always committed. I've always recommitted every 1 year. So I say, why am I doing it, and is it worth it? For one more year, let's do it. Let's do it. That's how I kind of moved it to 9 years. And to the corner office, I think it's not even a corner office. Any leader, you need to know why you're doing it, and automatically the right people will follow you if you know why you're doing it. And I would just say, once you start doing it and you kind of are vulnerable, you kind of are focused on it. Again, as a leader, you don't know it all. You never will know it all, but you need to surround yourself with the right people that will help you get there. And again, it's a mission that if you know your mission, everyone, the right people will associate. So again, that's my advice to myself. I would say more to anybody else, as I was, when I did not know and I was more naive. But it's a fascinating journey, I would say, all through being an entrepreneur and anything, and being a leader even so. But again, it's a lot of responsibility that also comes with it.
My guest today, Satyam Kantamneni, is the co-founder and chief executive officer of UXReactor. UXReactor has successfully guided exponential growth, placing it on the Inc. 5000 and SF Fast 100 list for 4 consecutive years, demonstrating its position as the fastest expanding firm specializing in user experience design and product strategy. Satyam, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.